seconds. As you can see, most of the gang is here, along with, well, a longtime member of the cast. Hasn't been around in a while, but Rachel Malone is joining us for the first time. Rachel, with a couple years since you've been on the air?
Probably so. It's been quite a while. It's been far too long.
So, all right, but yeah, we're gonna be recording here in just a second. As long as and Robin, are we still in limbo? Try saying just a few words, Robin.
Can she even hear you?
I don't know. She should be. We should be able to hear her. I don't know if she can hear us. Somebody want to text Robin if somebody has her number and tell her to shoot over to Zoom. She'll join Rob on Zoom, and we'll work her out next week. Robin, did you catch that? She's still.
I'm telling her now.
Okay. And make sure to tell her to close her browser window that's got the vMix call on it, so it doesn't interfere. Sorry, folks. This is how live radio works, live TV, whatever you want to call it, live video. Not everything runs perfectly all the time.
Robin said she reconnected. So can we hear her?
No, I can't. I just seen her. I see her moving her mouth, but
We got nothing, Robin.
I just sent her a message on Facebook.
She's getting it from all angles now.
Yeah, good. Oh my God, I've got 63 messages coming in.
Amanda, I wonder what that delay around Portage County is up to now.
I don't know, but let me tell you that the sense of urgency has gone in the toity with the fact that they have arrested our Speaker of the House and our former GOP chairman and a couple. It's everybody's hanging onto their seat to see what's going to happen, but it ain't over. It's going to be ugly.
Better, hey, Robin, better now than 2 months from now.
Yeah.
All right. Now I need to bring up this. Robin, I see you over on Zoom. She's still connecting to audio.
I'm here.
There we go.
Yay.
Oh, it's double Robin. Look at that.
So she has to close her vMix.
Yeah, I have to take care of that on my end here.
Wow, she's wearing the same outfit and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I always say I needed a clone.
There you go. You got two of you.
Get twice the work done.
Okay, for people on Facebook and YouTube, we are live on YouTube tonight as well. If you want to get your comments in, just type a comment on either of the videos, either on Facebook or on YouTube. I get them in about 15 seconds. So if you want to, for example, when we're in the news segment, if you want to comment on a news story, feel free. If you want to ask Rachel a question when we come to her interview segments, feel free. We will get those on the air. I know for a fact we're live on Facebook because I seen it just a minute ago. So I think, what was that? I think we are ready to fire off and do this thing. Got to make one more adjustment on this. And let's see here. Yeah, we're going to leave it like that. I'll get to the doing some work behind the scenes, but I think it's time to kick the show off, guys. Recording in 5, 4, 3.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one on Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morris, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with our friend Rachel Malone about the Texas Republican Party convention.
I'm Dana Lufer, and Bloomberg is spending at least $15 million on ads in the presidential and congressional races.
I'm Gary Doherty, and we have a DGU at lunch at McDonald's. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 551 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and we're back. It's been exactly a week since we recorded last. I've had a busy week. We'll get to that in a little bit. Rob, how about you, man?
I've had a great week. I was a guest on Amanda's show, Eye on the Target Radio. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load Radio. I got to interview Tony Simon this morning, so I'm editing my own podcast. I've been working out, and I carry it every day. Gary, how about you? Works better if you turn off the mute. Gary,
oh, you know what?
you?
It's on my dude. It's on my end. Hang on. Here we go. Now, Gary, what have you been up to, bud?
Hey, you know what? In Illinois, it has been super busy with concealed carry classes. As everybody, we've had concealed carry for 7 years, and now everybody wants one. Too bad
God
you waited
bless.
so long. Now there is a massive delay, but we are getting them through classes about 45 to 50 a weekend, and then a couple of private classes here and there during the week. So we are very, very busy getting a lot of safe, new firearms owners going in Illinois. Dana?
Well, I've been carrying every day. I've determined I've got the 4 rules cemented into my memory. Every morning when I get to the office, I have to take my temperature. You know how hard it is to point that infrared temperature device at my forehead?
Mm-hmm.
It's I cringe every time I do it.
Trigger discipline
Amanda?
conflicts with...
Yeah, well, don't point it at anything you don't want to kill or destroy. So, Amanda, what have you been up to?
Well, man, I have been training. I have both been taking classes. So I had a class with Chris Serino and the Serino Training Group on AR-15s and his operators class. And I've been giving them lots and lots of classes for concealed carry and beginners. So I've been teaching a lot of 9mm stuff. What type gun should I have? And just bringing out a whole variety and letting them try them and work with them, and then kind of tuning in for what fits different people. And right now, Ohio is so busy with their concealed carries that appointments are delayed to make their application by something like 200 days. Ooh. So, hey, Robin, what about you?
Well, things have been busy here, too, doing lots of training. We have so many new people coming into the Girl and the Gun community, as well as gun owners nationwide. But here at A Girl and a Gun, we've been so busy. We've opened 2 new chapters so far this week, and we're just getting started. So we have lots of ladies coming in. So that's taken a lot of my time, but a lot of excitement. How about you, Paul?
Very cool. Well, I made a trip out to Kentucky, and I have and back, and of course did the disarmament dance through Illinois. but I have been just busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. We've had to do a lot of changes, of course, with GRPC going online. We had to move AmCon online also. And so everybody that we had scheduled to speak, we had to, and basically move the date as well. Instead of going the 17th, we were supposed to go with AmCon. We moved it back to Saturday the 12th, so we could be on a Saturday when more people could both attend and speak. And so we have just been, I've been talking with everybody and trying to get everything set there. I'm also very much involved in the GRPC. I'm the one that gets to edit the video. So we've been having meetings and discussions, and God bless them, they asked me to speak again this year, so I've been kind of trying to start to figure that out. And oh, by the way, instead of having until the middle of September, now I've got to have my talk done and recorded by the middle of August so it can air in the middle of September. So just all kinds of extremely busy things going on for me. Nothing, unfortunately, involves around something going bang. Let's see here. Training classes. Does anybody have training classes? Well, let's do, before we go off to that, we're forgetting somebody. I've never really, Rachel, I still consider you a member of the staff, even though you haven't been on the air in quite a while. What have you been up to since the last time you've been on the air? It's been a lot, I know that.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. That's a little more than a week. We'll go with the short version. So, goodness. So a couple of years ago, I came on board with Gun Owners of America, and I'm the Texas director. So I've been building up the team here. And GOA is a national organization, but has always been involved on the state level. But I've been the first boots on the ground here in Texas. And so in the past year, I joined, started the program, hired a second person full-time here in Texas. So we are ready to rock and roll. People ask me all the time, oh, did you know that Bloomberg wants to target Texas? Did you know that Bloomberg wants gun control in Texas? Like it's a new thing that they're announcing to me. I've actually been aware of that for a little bit, but I'm glad other people are becoming aware. But, they need to know that it's not just the two of us, not just Felicia and me, but our whole entire team of hundreds or thousands of active volunteers across the state. We just won some very, very important primary races, even getting two incumbents out, two very, very liberal incumbents, replacing them. So we are just getting started. So watch out, Texas. Bloomberg needs to know that we're coming, too.
Amen. All right, we are going to do this. We're going to, first of all, I want to ask everybody, please, if you would, check out the Self-Defense Radio Network. There are a dozen shows there right now, a lot of great shows. You can see that we're there. Survival and Basic Badassery is there. Eye on the Target Radio, Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, of course, Self-Defense Gun Stories, a lot more shows. You can not only listen from the website, you can subscribe right from the website if you see a show you like. That's at sdrn.us. Please go check it out. What we're going to do right now, we're going to go ahead and step aside to break. When we come back, we're going to be doing a full interview, 2 full segments with Rachel Malone, talking about Texas, what's going on there. We'll get to all that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Our guest tonight, of course, everybody should know her. If you're a new listener to the show in the last, little over a year, or maybe 2 years, you may not be as familiar with her as you could be. Our guest is a good friend of mine and friend of the show, Rachel Malone. Rachel, thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul and Rob, for the invitation, and everyone. It's so good to be back and see everybody.
So let's get right into it. The main reason we wanted you to come on and talk tonight is there's been a lot of things going on in Texas. The Republican Party of Texas had their convention, and it sounds like things kind of went sideways. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
That's a diplomatic way of putting it, Paul. Another diplomatic way would be to say just it was a mess, for sure. And, people are still trying to find a scapegoat and blame somebody and figure out whose fault it is. I think it's too big of a mess to blame on one single person. I don't think there's one you can blame. Obviously, the pandemic response is largely to what precipitated the events where it was on again, off again. We weren't sure if it was going to be in person or in Houston. Literally, Felicia and I were driving to Houston, and it still had not been decided if the full convention was going to be in Houston or virtual. And that was because of Mayor Turner, very liberal Mayor Turner in Houston, who had promised to shut it down, and then there was a fight in the courts. But anyway, all of that to say, yes, it was a mess. It was on again, off again. It actually still isn't finished. So despite the fact that we were having votes and caucus meetings at like 3 a.m., some Senate districts were up until 4 or 5 a.m. trying to decide on the chairman or decide on the board of directors or other votes. In the end, it went over a full week. I think it went 8 full days, and then adjourned with a motion that said we're going to adjourn and then come back for a second convention to finish our business later. So the when and the where of that is yet to be determined. But to get to the heart of things, the point of the Republican convention here in Texas is to do party business. So to elect party leadership, the state chair, the vice chair, and the board of directors, to set the party rules, and one of the main reasons I was there, to set the party's legislative priorities and to set their platform. So one of the few things that actually was voted on would be the legislative priorities. And I was very encouraged to see that even though when I started doing activism in Texas, it seemed like nobody knew what constitutional carry was. Constitutional carry was absolutely voted on one of the party's top 8 priorities. And if you consider the fact that the platform listed 300, 400, 500 items, coming in within the top 8 is not a bad thing. So we're very glad that the delegates consider that to be a priority. Obviously, the legislators don't always do what the delegates want. They don't always do what the platform says. But having it in there that is the will of the delegates certainly helps. And I think the main lesson that we can take away, that I can take away from my experience there is, we weren't sure if it was going to happen, but Felicia and I just made the decision that we were going to show up. Like this is our job to promote gun rights here in Texas, and we needed to connect with the grassroots, and there was work to be done. We decided we were going to show up and make the best use of the situation, and we did. And we were able to help a lot of delegates to testify, and help them through the process, navigate the process, know what was going on, monitoring the committees so people knew what was happening. It's really the same thing that we do during the legislative session. We monitor, we show up, we testify ourselves, we bring people into the process so that they're the ones talking to their own legislators. And I think the same rule applies because, none of us know what legislative session is going to be like. I mean, I'm sitting here, it starts at the beginning of January. I think it's January 5th or 6th. I don't know if it's going to be somewhat quasi-virtual. I don't know if they're going to do hearings like normal. But either way, we have got to show up and have a presence. Like, gun owners have absolutely got to keep showing up, whether that means virtually, in person, some kind of hybrid combination. Even though we know it's going to be a mess, it's not going to be organized, people are really not going to know what's going on, maybe until the very last minute. It is so important to just be determined to navigate that process and show up and fight for gun rights. And then connected with that, the second lesson that I learned is, you know, a lot of people say, well, they want the party to be fighting more for gun rights or for their pet issue, and they're very upset that the party isn't. You know, I can share those concerns as well. I really do wish that some other organization would just show up and do all my work for me and I could sit at home and not have to do it. That would be really great. But at the end of the day, you can't count on somebody else to go to the fight for you. You can hope that they will. You can hope they will join you. But at the end of the day, you got to be the one to show up if it's something you really care about. So those were some brief lessons. I don't know what you guys have been reading nationally in the news, but would be happy to discuss further.
Texas is a little bit unusual in the sense that there are regional meetings of delegates, then there's a state meeting. In theory, they tell the Republican Party of Texas what the party priorities should be. Not all states bother to do that. And not all states do it to the degree that Texas does it. Obviously, legislators often have their own priorities. Were there comments about, hey, if you want our help at the grassroots, it would be great if you listened to us and enacted these priorities?
Comments from who? From the legislators? Or from
the delegates?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and to your point about Texas being very bottom-up grassroots, absolutely. We are one of only 2 Republican parties in the whole nation, I believe, who is, to a strong degree, bottom-up, grassroots-led. So anybody who votes in the Republican primary has the ability to go be a delegate at the precinct-level convention. And if you go there and you pitch yourself well and you present yourself well, you can be elected a delegate to the second level. And again, same thing, you present yourself well, you do the work there, you can be elected a delegate to the state level. And it's all of those people who decide the platform. And unlike a lot of states where it really is a bought and paid for position, or it's one given to the VIPs, maybe the elected officials or the big donors, right. And everything is scripted, everything comes from the bottom. Like, there were so many platform planks that were introduced by some random person who voted in the primary election, said, I really think the party should stand for this thing. And they introduced it at a lower level and convinced enough people all the way up that it was important that got added to the list of either priorities or platform items. And one of the reasons that it is such an open process is because people have been involved, or the grassroots, people who care about liberty at the grassroots level, have been involved not just in the shaping of the platform, but in the shaping of the rules. And even in the past decade, they've done tremendous work to make sure that the meetings are open. For example, it used to be the board meetings happened behind closed doors. Nobody knew how our representatives voted on the board of directors for the party. Now it's all open. It's live streamed. Everybody can come and attend and live stream and take pictures. So there's a lot more transparency, and there has been. But yes, there's also definitely been a sense of delegates becoming more aware that, hey, we have this platform, we have these priorities, and now we need to go take this to the elected officials. Although this convention was odd in the sense that there really weren't elected officials there. There were a couple of them testifying to the committees, but none of them got their stage time. And they didn't. The ones who would have come just to shake the hands and get the pictures and promote themselves, they didn't show up because there wasn't any reason to.
So was this a hybrid convention, meaning some was online and virtual and some was in the flesh?
Yes. So the pre-convention meetings happened in person, and I didn't quite make that clear before. So before the official convention starts, like the first general session on Thursday, all day Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they have the pre-convention temporary committee meetings. And that is where almost all of the business is decided. Even though it can be overturned later by the permanent committee or even on the floor by the body, almost everything that the temporary convention decides, or the temporary committees decide on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, that's what ends up staying in. And so I've always told people, if you care about policy items, if you care about gun rights or another policy item, you want to show up to those committee meetings. It parallels what I tell people for the legislature. You know, don't just show up for that House floor vote, because once something comes to the House floor, let's be honest, they don't bring it to the floor unless they know they have the votes to pass it. It's very, very, very rare to kill something on the floor. So you can be almost certain if it's on for a floor vote, it's almost certainly going to pass. But what really matters is the committee work. That's where they're deciding if there's the will to pass it or if there's the will to stop it. So that's where you want to show up. And because so few people actually show up there, oh my gosh, one person has so much more impact. So that's what we were doing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in person in Houston. It did happen in person. Not very many people showed up, but the people who did show up, man, they had a strong voice. And I'm really proud of our gun activists because they did show up.
Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, about how they showed up?
We're glad they were there. What did they accomplish?
Absolutely. So we had two main objectives. Make sure constitutional carry stayed a strong priority, which it did. I testified to that effect. A number of our other delegates testified. And the way that happened is they just stood up in front of the committee. You know, they had a sign-up process where it's pretty informal. You sign your name up and say, hey, I want to testify. And they had certain times throughout the day when they would call the public in, the delegates. And they would just get to talk for 3 or 4 minutes and explain why they thought that their issue was a priority. And honestly, so few people did. I would say, a solid percentage. Maybe I can't put a number on it. But we were one of the issues that had the most delegates showing up to talk about it for sure. So that was one of our items that we accomplished, and that wasn't hard. The committee was very much in favor of that. The other thing was interesting. We wanted to make sure that we had strong gun rights planks in the platform. And almost all of that sailed through. Everybody was happy to hear from us and just immediately implemented our suggestions, except for in the education committee. And ironically, I keep on telling the parallels, but this really does parallel what I find in the legislature as well. The education committee can be so caught up in everything for the children, they forget about liberty. They forget that liberty actually helps the children to stay safe. And so this committee wanted to say that the Republican Party of Texas only wants teachers and employees to be able to carry handguns only if they have the right certification and only if it's in their own school where they're employed. Whereas our position is we're pushing for the same bill we filed last year, where if you have a license to carry, you can carry that handgun concealed inside the school. I don't care if you're the janitor or the principal or a volunteer or a coach or a parent. You should be able to carry your concealed handgun there, just like we have in campus carry, just like we have in Walmart. And so the committee put their language instead of ours. And so I said, well, if you're going to do that, we will take up all your time on Wednesday in committee of the whole. And we marched in all of our delegates and took up a whole lot more of their time and let the whole committee know what the education subcommittee had done. And when it came down to it, we actually got a unanimous vote in favor of ours. And the guy who'd stopped it up in the education subcommittee, he either voted with us or he just abstained because he realized everybody was against him. So, that's what happens when you show up. If our people hadn't been there, we wouldn't have been able to make that happen. So they made a long trip. They made a lot of sacrifice, and we were able to help the party make a strong statement with that.
Well, I have to say, Rachel, this is what you're talking about is like so foreign to some of the rest of us in how our states work. It's so interesting to hear how it works, because as you were saying about some positions in some states are almost bought and paid for, ours has become a position where people campaign, and there's actually campaign funds that are put out simply to be able to talk about what the party does. And it doesn't, Texas sounds like so much more fun and actually focused on how the United States really was built, not whatever we have here in not so free America anymore.
So true. I mean, you're always welcome to come join us in Texas. We will take visitors or refugees, however you want to put it.
Go on down, Amanda. We'll make room.
That's right. See?
All right,
I'm telling you,
Be a
that
snowbird and go down there for the winter, Amanda.
That would be it.
Yeah, you should do it.
We are up on the break here. Rachel, can I have you hang on for one more second with us?
Sure thing.
All right. We're going to step aside to break. We've got one more segment with Rachel Malone. We'll get to that right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. Hey, and welcome back. This is our second segment with Rachel Malone of the Gun Owners of America. She is the Texas director of the Gun Owners of America. Rachel, I want to, as soon as I can get this back up here, there we go. I want to kind of, this is not exactly gun related, it's just curious on my part. The elephant in the room the last several months has been the coronavirus, and parts of the country are shut down, parts of the country are open. This is happening, that isn't happening. How did the coronavirus affect the convention? Was there a lot of mask wearing? Was almost nobody wearing masks? I know it almost didn't happen in person. How did the coronavirus response affect the convention?
Right. So that was one of the major issues that leading up to the convention. It was back and forth, discussed one way and the other way. Governor Abbott kind of thought he took care of the issue by setting a statewide mask wearing order that he declared did apply to the convention, and everybody there was going to have to wear a mask. Everything in the hotel where we held the committee meetings, it was posted all over the place. Mask wearing is required. The party did provide masks, so everybody had the opportunity to. In the end, very few people actually wore a mask, and nobody said anything. There have been a number of lawsuits related to Governor Abbott's orders, whether mask wearing or shutting down businesses, etc. But I think the bottom line was it was kind of decided that it's not as enforceable as it seemed. And I'm not weighing in on the legality of that, just what I'm seeing in practice. So most people didn't wear one. The chairs were set somewhat far apart, but probably not 6 feet apart. I will say though, there were very, very, very few people there. So if you were concerned about something and you wanted to stand far away from someone, you could stand 10 feet from everybody at all times if you wanted to.
Very cool. All right,
did the conversation about the coronavirus dominate the conversation, or do you think that was part of the topics being addressed that gave you less time to address the Second Amendment issues, or do you find that it wasn't an issue in scheduling?
In the priorities committee, actually one of the major things that they discussed was a priority to curtail emergency powers. So they were very concerned that the governor not be able to shut down businesses. It was a major concern, a major hot button issue that people had. So that was discussed quite a bit. But, you know, honestly, every single convention, there's some pertinent issue that comes up that's discussed a lot. Last time around, it actually was guns. It was the red flag law issue, which ultimately the convention ended up opposing, even though Governor Abbott sent people to say he supported it and tried to get them to change their minds. So, you know, there's a hot button issue every time, but people care about guns a lot every single time, even if it's not the #1 hot button issue. So I don't think it had much of a negative effect.
Rachel, I'm glad you brought that up. Governor Abbott's gun control push might be the reason it's so hard to get you on this show anymore. You're busy furthering the right of self-defense in Texas. But now you have a different Republican Party chairman in Texas. It's Colonel Allen West. Is he seen as being a supporter of the Second Amendment, and in particular, the priorities coming from the grassroots meetings?
So he's definitely seen as a very pro-gun person, a very pro-gun representative when he was in Congress, from what I hear, and generally a pro-gun guy. I think it remains to be seen whether he's going to push for the grassroots priorities. Is he going to listen to the will of the grassroots? Is he going to be just an enforcer? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think for any chair it remains to be seen. The last chair we had started out absolutely the most grassroots chair we've ever had. He showed up and he testified for constitutional carry. He was all about the will of the people, the will of the delegates, and making the grassroots heard. But gradually that changed over a couple of years. So, I'll give anybody the benefit of the doubt, but also everybody needs to be held accountable to, even if they start out well, to remain strong.
You'll be there to watch. I'll be here.
Absolutely. We will.
Rachel, when you were a regular on the show, when you were a regular part of the staff years ago, we used to have conversations, and I used to tease you that I thought that South Dakota was going to get constitutional carry before Texas, and yeah, we did. But
okay, fine, you won.
What I'm wondering is where is constitutional carry in Texas right now?
So we're not in session. It got stalled. Again, people want to find a scapegoat. They said it got stalled by the leadership, by the speaker last time. In reality, it stalled because a majority doesn't have the will to bring it forward. If a majority had the will to make it happen, it would happen. I think that's kind of generally the case of any issue anywhere. But all our rules allow for that, and everybody just wants to say, oh, if everybody else gets on board, I'll be there too. I'll cast that vote on the House floor. But so far, we don't have enough people who want to work to make it actually happen, or we haven't yet. But however, I will say, in Texas, it's very normal for any major piece of legislation to take multiple sessions to pass. And so just the fact that it hasn't passed yet doesn't mean that it won't. A lot of it is hinging on how the elections go this November. So we could flip back a fair number of seats. The Democrats flipped 13 seats, I believe, 12 seats last time, part of the Robert Francis O'Rourke wave. He's not in still, so there's not his wave. We may be able to reclaim those seats. We have some amazing, super strong pro-gun candidates running for those seats, so we could actually end up with a stronger legislature. On the other hand, they could flip it completely Democrat. We could be fighting against the worst, most vile kind of gun control all session. So, it's I would say it's wait and see, but I don't believe in wait and see. I believe work as hard as you can, sure. Blood, sweat, and tears, and then we'll see what the results are.
Well, and if I could have you explain, because not all of a good share of our listeners are Texas listeners, but not all of our listeners are Texas listeners. I'm a really big fan of the way you guys do legislation. Your legislature only meets every other year.
Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine if our legislature was full-time or if it met every year. So that's correct. It meets 5 months every other year. So it's a crazy, frenzied session. Everybody works really, really, really hard to get their thing passed. So it starts in January. January, really nothing happens. At the end of the month, you get your committee assignments. So committee hearings start happening like middle of February, and then they happen really strong and earnest in March, a little bit in April, and then most of the bills are really being rushed to the floor April and May, and then it's over. And if your bill didn't pass, it's dead for the next 2 years. So that's one of the reasons it makes it hard to pass a bill. Obviously, that's rough when we want to pass a good gun bill, but it makes it a whole lot easier to kill a bad bill, and I'm not complaining about that. I'd rather it be harder to pass legislation, for sure.
Rachel, you talk about legislators who would like to be the last signature to pass a bill rather than one of the early adopters. Do legislators co-sponsor bills, which means they're sure to support it when it comes to either the committee or the floor?
They do co-sponsor bills, and what that means is they put their name on it, saying, "Hey, I'm putting my stamp of approval on it. Like I approve of this message," which implies that yes, they're going to support it when it comes to the floor. And speaking of jumping on the bandwagon late, it's funny you should mention co-authoring. Last year, weeks after it was clear that constitutional carry hadn't made the hurdle, it hadn't gotten its committee hearing soon enough, so it was going to die, we had 1 or 2 representatives sign on to it and co-author it after that point. It was kind of like they wanted to get the creds for having signed on to it, but they didn't want to take the rap for it early on when people were really paying attention to it. They wanted the best of both worlds, and in my opinion, that's the worst of both worlds. But we do have people who do that. And
I suspect you know their names.
I absolutely do, and it's public record on the Texas Legislature website. And screenshotted in case it goes down.
Thank you, Senator. Your name wasn't on it when it was in committee. I know because I looked. Thank you for being there and remembering that to remind people. Are you still able to do your grassroots activism? I used to be able to follow you on Facebook where I'd see, oh, Rachel's here, Rachel's there.
So with COVID happening, it's been obviously rough to have in-person events. I think I did exactly 0 in-person events from mid-March until mid-June, beginning of June, I think. Since then, I've done a handful. A lot of them have been outdoor events, like a picnic or something, which is a lot of fun. I've been enjoying that. But yeah, it's changed the game. And I think in some ways it makes it a little harder because you can't go in person, you can't see your people there, or you have to be careful if you do. You have to find a place where you can meet. On the other hand, it opens opportunities for exploring technology and using virtual options, and so we're rolling out some of that as well. And Felicia and I have used that time to develop some, our biweekly email newsletter. We're getting ready to come out with our print newsletter that's going to go out to be available for gun ranges and other organizations. So we're using it for development and trying to make the best of the situation.
We've only got
We always wanted you to be 2 places at once. You can almost
That's
do
right.
it now online.
That's right. I can almost do that.
We got about 2.5 minutes left in the segment. I want to bring in a few comments that have been coming in. John Adine, of course, John, he says, let's get him, Rachel. Mm-hmm. Also, he says, love to go testify in front of committees.
Yes, and I just want to take a minute and say that Dr. John came in. He drove up from San Antonio in February, and there were some doctors sitting in the gallery with their anti-gun agenda. Even though they had the buttons on them, the anti-gun buttons, none of them was brave enough to come and actually say what they supposedly believed. Dr. John marched up and he gave amazing pro-gun testimony in front of that committee, and I was so proud that he was there.
And then Sarah on Facebook says, hard to pass a bill? Heck yeah, I agree. It's a feature, not a bug. I wish it would be that way in more states. I really do.
Sarah knows. Love you, Sarah.
All right, we've got just about a minute left. If somebody is in Texas, wants to get more involved, I got to say, things have been moving since. I don't want to overinflate your ego. I don't think that's possible. You're one of the most humble people I know. But since you went from the Republican Party of Texas to Gun Owners of America, I see action happening in Texas, and I gotta believe a lot of that lays at your feet. If people want to become more involved, how can they get in touch, and where do they start?
I've got two things for folks to do. So number one, go to gunowners.org/Texas. That's gunowners.org/Texas, and you can join. Guys, it's $25 a year, and people say, well, what do I get for that $25? You get $25 worth of gun rights activism, or probably a whole lot more than that, because we make very, very good use of that, and you can also join at higher levels. And the second thing to do is, if you're on Facebook, which if you're listening there, you probably are, go find the GOA Texas Facebook group and join it. That is strictly for Texas people, but if you know Texas friends, send them there. It's not just a talking group. That's an action group. We're posting action items there about Texas gun rights. So again, GOA Texas Facebook group, or you can go to gunowners.org/Texas.
Very cool. All right, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been way too long since we've been able to talk to you on the air.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. So great to see y'all.
All right, we're going to step aside to break, folks. When we come back, we've got our news segment. We got a lot of talk to talk about. We'll get to that right after this.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearms Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
And welcome back. This is the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We got our news segment coming up here, and let's go ahead. Before we do go heavy into news, I want to bring in a couple more social media commentary, and I got to merge this one in. Oops, I got to merge. There we go. We got to merge this one in so that it doesn't block off faces. And I don't think Rachel's on anymore, so she won't see this, but Sarah said, Rachel, thanks for all your awesome work. You're an inspiration. And Dr. Adine says, Lieutenant Colonel West is now chair of the Republican Party of Texas. And I think that's a great, great thing. And a great way to lead off our news segment. That is one of the things that really hit the national news this week, is that Colonel West is taking a big role in Texas politics again. And guys, I don't know if you're all aware of this, but he had a horrific motorcycle accident this spring. And for him to jump back and be this active this quickly, that's amazing.
Yeah, he kind of got scuffed up. He, the post-wreck pictures were, a little bit of casts and a whole lot of road rash.
Yeah.
For those of you who wonder if donating to the Gun Owners of America for their activities in Texas is well worth it, let me testify personally about Rachel's work ethic and also the work ethic of her associates. That money pays you back manyfold.
Yeah, and not just Texas, Rob. I'm a life member. I live in Illinois, and I know they're active all over the country.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, let's see. Other news. It's my screen is way far away from where I'm actually, because I have to keep my microphone near my mouth. Everytown announced Thursday it's spending $15 million on a digital ad campaign in 8 swing states to help boost former Vice President Joe Biden and Democrats in competitive Senate races. AdBlitz is the opening salvo with $60 million. It is pledged to spend during the 2020 campaign. I wonder, of course, Bloomberg's got the money to do it, but I seen on Newsfeed earlier this week that first time out on a digital, on a virtual fundraising meeting that Trump, I think he raised $25 million in a few hours. I'm wondering if finally the general public might have the money to compete with Bloomberg. What do you guys think?
I'm worried that targeted advertising is easier than ever. I can look at your clicks and know a huge amount about you. I can determine your sensitive issues. If you're possibly an anti-gun voter, I can target advertising aimed directly at you. Now, with COVID, more of us are watching screens rather than being out in the real world. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes us easier to target and manipulate in our isolation.
There's some of that, but at the same time, be prepared that you're going to see a whole lot more of the target marketing right to your cell phone. They're no longer going to call you. Robocalls don't work because we look at it and say, we don't know this number, and we ignore it. But when they send you a text, you read it. And stay tuned. Your phone is going to blow up in October.
That's so frustrating. I try and block those numbers.
Yeah.
I have to, I have to enter them first and then kill them.
There's going to be a lot of them. A lot. So, hey, in the news segments, the one that I want to talk about, I want to roll on down here and talk about Mark and Patricia Mccluskey. So we all have seen the news where they've been charged by the St. Louis Circuit District Attorney, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, with felony unlawful use of a weapon. And so what's happening is that there's this battle about were they legal or were they not legal to defend. I mean, on our show, we call them Ken and Karen, but the McCluskeys, were they legal? And in St. Louis, you can use your gun to defend your property. So there is that. But there's a new piece of information that just came out, and it says that Patricia Mccluskey's handgun was not operable at the time that she was outside on her patio disinviting people to come and visit. And that the prosecutor has given it to an armorer to repair prior to pressing charges.
Wait a minute. That's called tampering with evidence.
Bingo!
Exactly.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I want to be defense attorney on that one.
They disabled the firearm because they used it in a court case, and it had to be inoperable to take it into the court. And so they switched the spring and the firing pin. And so the armorer is undoing what they did to make it inoperable. So it's
after the fact.
Yeah, tampering with evidence. Yes.
So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. This show ain't over yet.
Well, I think it's folly for them I was going to say that I think it's folly for her to even charge him because the governor's already said he will pardon them if convicted. So why waste people's money?
Because it's not about that. This is about social media prosecution.
Yep.
This is about clicks. This is about being shown as the tough prosecutor, anti-gun, pro Black Lives Matter, pro rabble-rousing protesters, and and these bad people that are defending their house. Okay, she had bad gun handling skills, but I'm telling you, I saw this on the internet, and it had resonated with me. And that is, you go to war with the training you have, not with the training you want. She had the training she had, and she took the stand she took, and no one was hurt, and she survived the encounter, and she accomplished her mission. I think that's where we're at.
The skills that I have, that I think might be pretty good, would look pretty ratty if you put hundreds of people on the street in front of my house.
Right. And you're like, wait, I'm not prepared.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I noted I believe the governor, not only the governor who said he'd pardon them, the AG said he would oppose prosecution. So you're right. This is clickbait prosecution. There's a better word for that. Help me, you guys.
Disgusting.
I'm not allowed to say those words.
Kangaroo court, maybe?
It's a marketing ploy when the prosecutor runs for office again.
Exactly.
That's the best description that we can use in a family-friendly environment.
Yes.
Are you trying to say court of public opinion?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
That's it.
How about the Lynchburg judge? You want to touch on that before we have to jump?
We got all kinds of time. Go for it.
Well, all kinds of laws were passed when the Democrats took over both houses and the governor's mansion in Virginia. They imposed universal background checks, so-called. Well, and then they said, by the way, if you're under 21, you don't even bother. Well, previously, 18 and 21-year-olds could purchase handguns through private sales, and they still could. So you've got 18 and 21-year-olds who have a gun. That means you've got a two-tier system of justice. Oh, my twin brother has a gun. We live in the same household. I didn't get one ahead of time, but now I can't. That's called disparate impact of the same law on people similarly situated. And a judge said, this doesn't fly. It doesn't pass the sniff test. So he said the appeal to question whether that law is constitutional should at least be heard, and he imposed an injunction.
Well, that's good. How did Virginia end up with a judge with sense?
Law of averages. There are a lot of judges. Some of them, I suspect the people who brought the case venue shopped to try and get the best possible hearing they could.
We've got a comment. I just went over and checked, and I'm a little behind on getting these social media comments. And Dr. Dean says, I'm getting 5x matching texts all week for going back to when we first started talking about the marketing and the proliferation of political texts. I'm waiting.
I wish it was only 5 a week. It's more 3 to 5 a day.
It's going to be worse.
I think what John means is, if you donate now, we'll get others to donate 5 times whatever you donate, and you're all, stop.
We're all seeing that too, man. Man, oh man.
Did you see on the news that AT&T, Verizon, and one of the other phone companies are blocking some of Trump's fundraising texts?
Well, Verizon sure isn't.
I'm getting a lot of new polls. I don't know if you guys are seeing polls, but I'm getting these texts that are rapid response poll. Tell us your opinion really fast. So they're trying to data mine that way too.
And you're like, my opinion is shut up.
My opinion is quit
stop
calling
texting me.
Right.
Yes.
I use AT&T for my cell phone service, and they've got a wonderful feature. If somebody calls me that I don't want to talk to again, like a telemarketer trying to sell me extended warranty on my 1982 Honda Goldwing, or
right,
you know, or anything like that, when they call, first time I answer, if I know it's a telemarketer or somebody I don't want to talk to, I can just block them. Just 3 touches on the phone, and they're blocked. And AT&T lets you do it through text messages, too. Somebody sends you a text message, you don't want to hear from them again, bing, 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 you're done.
It doesn't matter because they're using rolling numbers.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I only get maybe 1 or 2 a week. I'm sure by the time October rolls around.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying.
The Harass Paul Action Committee has decided to give out Paul's phone number. Contact me, Rob, at politicsandguns.com, and we'll see if we can get Paul's phone number spread where it properly belongs.
Area code 605-215-1438. Enjoy talking to the voicemail for the show.
There was we've seen a very similar event happen coast to coast. If you now want to get a gun and the state has to grant you that permission, enjoy the wait. If you want to get your concealed carry permit and the state has to process your application, good luck. Waits range from weeks to months. There's often legislation that says, OU, sheriff, OU, state police, OU, firearms processing division of whoever. You have a finite amount of time to do that, and then the bureaucracy breaks the letter of the law, if not the spirit. And that's happening in Illinois. There's a suit brought. I would really look forward to a judge saying, excuses don't count. I don't care how many people ask you to do your job. Do your job. And it's your boss's job to take that demand up to the legislator. And if you need more assets, these are constitutional rights. And if you can't do them, then the enabling legislation is invalid. We haven't seen a judge who's that brave yet.
It looks as if there's a couple different lawsuits that are happening, and in Ohio is now officially ripe for it because the neighboring county has posted a notice that says that they are no longer accepting applications until January because they're booked up that far in advance. Even though the law says that they have to issue the license within 45 days, they're not taking the applications for more than 200 days before the clock starts ticking for the 45 days.
Right, which is how they dodge how they technically remain. But I saw that in California. We've seen it in Illinois. We've seen it forever in New Jersey and New York.
Well, and I just got a press release earlier this week that the SAF is taking Illinois to court again because of that exact thing.
I've asked them to send Ohio a sternly worded letter. I got a text. I literally got a text from the lieutenant governor that said that, this is really a local issue, not a state issue. Excuse me?
It's a state.
Yeah, the sheriffs there blaming funding, from what I remember.
Why does lots of people process paperwork? Those people are called bureaucrats. They're not paid very much. I don't need sworn officers to process my carry permit.
Amen.
Right.
Amen. Well, we are coming up on the end of the segment. Anything we want to shoot in the next minute or so?
I would just add that in Illinois, it's more nefarious than that. They swept $30 million out of the fund that is supposed to be used for processing void cards and concealed carry permits. And at the same time, the legislator is trying to increase the cost of FOID cards by 300%. And, of course, they're not meeting the legally mandated 30-day requirement for FOID cards. I mean, it's such a hill of cards.
But will a judge recognize that evidence and overcome his biases and say, oh, your rights live here?
It'll take a while.
It's Illinois, where rights go to die.
Mea culpa.
All right. Well, I think we're going to give Gary a chance to go take his blood pressure medication, and we're going to step aside to break. We're going to hear from Concealment Solutions. When we come back, we've got our DGU segment. We'll get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our defensive gun use segment. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. And as always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. We've got two great stories up, and Rob, looks like somebody volunteered you to read the first one.
Well, thank you, whoever that was. This one is Miami-Dade, Florida. A gentleman went to McDonald's for an early lunch, 11:30. As he's leaving the restaurant, he's followed by another man. The other man punches him from behind. Now, by then, they're in the parking lot of a nearby Popeyes. And, of course, hit from behind, the victim falls to the ground. The attacker alternates between punching the victim in the face when he's down and then trying to reach into his pants pockets. The victim was able to get some mobility and hold onto his pockets. Cell phone video taken by a witness shows a good Samaritan firing her gun during the attack in an effort to stop it. The Samaritans simply described herself to the reporters as, "My name's Lula." Well, Lula says, quote, "The victim was bleeding profusely. I just had to save the guy's life. That's all I did, was try to save someone's life." Close quote. According to authorities, she warned the attacker to stop or she would shoot him. When the attacker ignored her, she shot at him but missed. That was good enough for the suspect to run off. He was apprehended a short time later and identified by 3 other witnesses. The victim was taken to a medical center where he was treated for multiple contusions to the head and face, deep lacerations to his right cheek, mouth, and a broken nose. The suspect is facing charges of attempted strong-arm robbery and felony battery. Gary, what do you think of this?
Well, you know, this show has been famous for saying nothing good happens after midnight. And as someone who worked a grave shift for a long time, it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And this just goes to show you that you don't know where the threat will come. Always be prepared.
Yeah, I would call 11:30 a.m. just before noon.
Yeah.
I would think that would be almost the safest time of the day, and there is no safe time of the day.
Exactly. That's my point.
What do you think about the fact that our Samaritan missed her target?
Well,
I'm wondering if she didn't miss intentionally. I'm wondering if that might not have been a warning shot.
Was she justified in using lethal force?
I believe so. From the reading of the story, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of where I wanted to go with was with the warning shot. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the cell phone video of it. I do not know how close they are, but if you're gonna take a shot, I kind of read that as a warning shot. If you're gonna take a shot, none of us have the movie gun that has unlimited ammo. You need to, if you've got a limited number of rounds, make each and every one count. If it's good enough to fire a warning shot, it's good enough to fire a for real shot.
Yeah, usually these stories, though, actually takes a warning shot. The story will be written up that way. The actual shooter will say, I tried a warning shot, and this wasn't, so I didn't really jump to that.
Okay.
But either way,
the bullet went somewhere downrange. You just launched it in the middle of a city.
But I think it says a lot about the fact that no matter how much you practice, that everything's dynamic and things are happening, and so you're carrying, you believe you're prepared, and it's never, in whatever the circumstance is, whenever you're called, the training you have is never enough, but it's what you've got. So it's just so dynamic. There's so many moving parts.
You get that rush of adrenaline, and things don't work the way you had it on the range previously.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dana, you just brought that up. I want to talk about that. Do you have time to get an adrenaline dump? The officer who has minutes to respond, he's right in the middle of it. If you give me seconds, my experience is that it takes a minute for my hands to shake. Do you have a different experience? I mean, what you've actually felt?
Yeah, if you're not prepared for it, if you haven't trained for it, then once you're into that situation, you're going to be affected with adrenaline start flowing, and I'm sure your hands will start moving a bit.
But for me that takes 30 minutes to a minute and a half.
I've never been
30 seconds to a minute and a half.
I've never been in defensive shooting, but I was in what I thought was going to be a fatal car accident a year ago this past November.
Right.
And I will tell you that while it was happening, everything was crystal clear, and I had no effect at all to my motor skills. Everything worked just like I had trained. And we train for this kind of stuff when you take truck driving training. Everything worked the way it should have. When when things started going south for me was when I was on the phone with 911, and all of a sudden I couldn't think straight, and I started yelling. I remember during that. This is in November. It's ice rain, and I'm on phone 911 and telling the dispatcher, I'm fine, but somebody needs to check on this guy because I just plowed into him hard. And the dispatcher's saying, well, stay where you are, do this, do that. I swore at the dispatch. This is something I would never do to a police officer or a dispatcher normally. I swore at the dispatcher, said, F you, I'm getting out of this truck. I'm going to make sure they're still breathing. And I'm exiting the passenger side of the truck as they're going, we don't need you to do that, sir. And I'm yelling back, yes, somebody needs to.
That's your old EMT training kicking in.
But I mean, I didn't in the immediate while it was happening. I didn't get the adrenaline dump. When I got the adrenaline dump, the truck was stopped, the parking brake was pulled, and I was on the phone with 911. So probably a minute and a half.
And that's what Rob's saying is it takes a time. But there's a different thing that happens, and I don't think they give it enough credit. And it's that kind of brain freeze thing where did I put my gun? Where do I? Somebody's got to do something. What do we? That kind of that pre-action thing where somebody's got to take some kind of action. What do I do?
Right.
Yeah, the front of your brain is off the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe I phrased it wrong, but that's what I was.
Dana, you're right. A lot of people just they put it in the adrenaline bucket, but it really is. There's a couple different things happening all at the same time, but it generally is categorized that way.
I think we've kicked this one around a bit, and we're about halfway through the segment. So let's go ahead and, Robin, somebody volunteered you to read the second one.
All right. This one is in Brownstown, Indiana. 2 men were at work in Brownsburg Cemetery when an armed 22-year-old male approached them. Without provocation, he attacked them. He chased 36-year-old worker Seth Robertson into an intersection, where he shot and killed him. As he chased the second cemetery worker, one of his errant shots hit a vehicle of a man stopped at a traffic light near the intersection. The bullet injured the driver. The driver stepped out of his car and returned fire, and stopped the attacker. Speaking with a local radio station, Second Amendment attorney Guy Relford said he was representing the driver and argued that the shooting was justified. Quote, "My client looked and realized that there was one thing he could do, and that was take action to save an innocent life," he told the station. The scenario was fairly clear to him that one person was chasing another and the other was saying, "No, no, no, please don't shoot me," end quote. Brownsburg police quickly determined that the driver acted lawfully and was justified under Indiana law. They also believe that the deceased attacker may have had mental issues which led to the incident. Rob, what do you make of this?
The defender did a great job. And as we were just mentioning, if you think you're going to sort the situation out in the moment, you can't. Your brain's not there to think for you. What you can do is recognize choices you've already made. So thank you for listening to this show. Thank you for thinking about it in your off time, maybe talking about it when you're in the range, because you're saying, wow, if somebody was committing murder right in front of me, I'd act or I wouldn't, because you won't have time to sort out the fine points later.
All right. Anything else we want to talk
by the way,
about
none of the news agencies said headshot, but the more I read it, I was kind of wondering, it sounded like a very few number of rounds stopped a guy, DRT.
Boom.
Yeah. And that doesn't just take a headshot. It takes a very specific headshot to do that one.
Well, and the fact that he had already been hit with a bullet, so he was injured. So for him to keep his wits about himself and to step out and to take action.
It's a very good point.
All right. Well, I'm not hearing a whole lot more conversation on this one, so we're going to go ahead and step aside to our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about blog posts and listener feedback, and we'll do all that right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
And welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Normally we talk listener feedback here, but as in the last several shows, I'm going to remind you that we'd really rather prefer either on Facebook or YouTube, because we're live broadcasting to both now, that you go ahead and comment on the live video. It's much more immediate, and we can get your opinions in on the same time we're talking about the subject. If you do want to email us, the address is onair@politicsandguns.com. I am on the fly going to change things up a little bit. Normally, I ask Rob what has been going on in Slowfax, and we'll be doing that in a second, but I realize that we've got all kinds of people that have their own media things going on that aren't exactly all Polite Society podcasts. So, Amanda, I'm going to pull you up first. What's been going on Eye on the Target Radio?
Hey, we're growing stations. That's
awesome.
The biggie. Here we grow again. I don't remember where. I haven't done the promo yet. Just added one more station. Oh, and one more thing. I haven't announced this either. We have a spot on Radio Row at SHOT Show.
Oh,
so we
awesome.
have officially made it to the big time. So that's what's going on with Eye on the Target. It's going gangbusters.
Robin, what's been going on over at A Girl and a Gun?
Well, A Girl and a Gun is growing like crazy. We have new chapters opening throughout the country. Just today, I opened 2 new chapters, got ladies on board to host events, Girl and a Gun events. People are eager for training, and we're excited to provide it for them. We have new blog articles going up all the time. I've been busy writing. I have a lot of help from my team that's writing. And we have some articles over on womenandguns.com also, so you can check out agirlandagun.org and womenandguns.com. Lots of great training information for newbies and for people looking for additional training info. Lots going on.
And before I get to Rob, Gary or Dana, do either of you have anything outside of PSP that you want to promote?
Just make sure you get out and vote. It's very important to talk to your neighbors. We're not going to be able to go door to door as much as we used to. It's going to be all talk to your neighbors. Make sure your neighbors get out and vote. Make sure your neighbors get a mail-in ballot if that's how they choose. Get everybody out to vote.
Dana?
I pretty much
wrapped up.
Sums it up for me too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and move off to where we normally do, and we go over to Rob. And man, I know there's been a bunch of stuff happening over at Slofax.
Well, before you move on, I've just recently interviewed both Robin and Amanda. They're running extra classes. They're running larger classes. They're running both face-to-face and doing online training. You know, if you have the interest, there are people who will make it happen for you. And I know it's as hard as it could be now to jump into a training class. Some of the classes are in states that make that hard, and it's hard to get ammunition. But there's a will, there's a way.
Amen. Ammunition isn't cheap, but it's still there.
Wouldn't that hurt to use hollow points in a training environment? Ow. All right. I wrote 2 articles, and Amanda contracted me to do one of them. The first
I did.
Before we get to hers, it really bothered me when I noticed that there are riots across the United States, but Democratic-controlled cities are openly racist and sexist when it comes to very fundamental human rights. The political left does not want to talk about it. They want it to go away, but you can test it for yourself. It doesn't matter where you live. Go and try and get a permit so that you could carry in Los Angeles, in New York, in Trenton. Well, cities don't come any more Democrat than there. If you're a Hispanic or a female in Los Angeles, you're 10,000 times less likely to get a permit.
Wow.
Compared to concealed carriers elsewhere in the United States, and judges don't recognize that bigotry. That article is called "The Racism and Bigotry the Left Desperately Wants to Ignore." My friend Amanda Suffolcool gave me all the information and said, hey, in Northeast Ohio, honest citizens were told to wait 7, 8, 9 months for their concealed carry application. By the way, it was increasing by about a month each week. Now, by law, the sheriff is required to process your application in a month and a half. But then sheriffs technically were within the letter of the law by saying you couldn't even apply for 6 months. Look, that isn't what legislators intended, and that's not what citizens were told would happen when Ohio passed their carry laws. Maybe they need the threat of constitutional carry to act right. That article is called Your Rights Come Before Politics. My articles are up at Clash Daily, at Ammoland, and at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com.
I also want to encourage our viewers and listeners to go visit John's blog at onlygunsandmoney.com. He is he's working tonight. He's doing a presentation for some of his clients, and so I certainly understand why he couldn't join us tonight. One more announcement about things outside of PSP. I expect in the next 2 weeks to be able to finish up the Guns 101 series with Amanda and Rob. We went off like gangbusters. We recorded, I want to say, 95 of them. And I thought it'd be cool to have 101 Guns 101 videos. But about the time that happened, that I thought we should do 101, I started getting busy again. And I started, thank goodness, to have regular income. And so I've been only home 1 day a week, and it's really hard to record those when you've got that kind of a schedule. But I do hope to get those finished in the next 2 to 3 weeks, certainly before the real big crush for AmCon and GRPC hit. And by the way, we are less than 60 days away from GRPC, and I think we are coming up on 45 days. We're a little bit over 6 weeks away from AmCon, so the interesting things are going to be happening around them very, very soon.
Okay, Paul,
All
this
right.
does not get you out of riding 1,000 miles on your motorcycle.
You know
still
what?
have to get out 1,000 miles.
I have promised. I promised Julianne that I would let her make the announcement of what's happening with that. The ride is not off. It is going to happen, but she has got an interesting twist that she's going to be announcing. And believe me, it is going to be so much fun. It is. I'll talk to my staff about it when we go away, which we're going to be doing here.
Paul, I want to barge in.
Yeah.
I saw somebody say, hey, the money you were going to spend on airfare and hotel rooms to get to AmCon
yes,
and GRPC.
That was John.
Why don't you use that
Donate
money?
it.
Yeah, either donate it to SAF directly or on Paul, or donate it to Paul's But Did They Die, right?
ButDidTheyDie.com. Exactly. But is one T. ButDidTheyDie.com. The ride is not dead. It's going to happen. I cannot wait to tell everybody what's going to be happening with it. It's so much fun. So that does do it for another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Rachel Malone for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Gary, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Rachel, and Rob.
Until next time.
And Tracy.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut the stream down. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been a fun show tonight. We're doing. We just had an upgrade to software today, my broadcast software. I'm doing a lot of things moving around. The show will continue to look better and better as we go along. I only had a few hours to prepare by the time that I got the software upgrade to when we went live. But things will continue to get better as we go along. Thank you for watching, and we will see you probably 1 week from today.